BucsGameday.com's own Caleb Skinner joins me on today's episode of the Locked On Bucs podcast. Talk about what he has seen at Tampa Bay Buccaneers training camp so far. Quarterbacks, defense, receivers, running backs. We're talking about it all on this episode of the Locked On Bucs podcast. Let's go.
You are Locked On Buccaneers, your daily Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bucs Nation? Welcome to the Locked On Bucs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We are your daily podcast covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. And we thank you for making us your first listen or view of the day. I'm David Harrison, covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for Sports Illustrated's BucsGameday.com. My co-host James Yarcho is off for this episode, but you can still find him at SBNationsBucsNation.com, the deputy editor over there with his own written content covering the Buccaneers. When we aren't here or there, you can find us on Twitter at JYarcho_Bucs, at DHarrison82, and at Locked On Bucs. Again, we thank you for making us first listen or your first view of the day. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. It's not a crisis line. It's not self-help. It's professional therapy done securely online, available to people worldwide, and they have a special offer for our listeners. Get 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/locked on. And joining us now here on the Locked On Bucs podcast, Caleb Skinner on Twitter at CHSNole. That's Nole for you non-Seminole fans. Writer and reporter for BucsGameday.com, as well as host of the Tribaholics podcast. I'll let you guess what that show is about. Caleb, welcome to the show. The NFL is a quarterback-driven league, and no quarterback draws more attention than Tom Brady. So now that you've seen TB12 live in person during the offseason and then in training camp as well, what did you see? How would you describe the atmosphere around camp practices with Brady on the field?
Since I've been there, it's kind of progressed as it's gone on. You know, it's kind of more laid back and, you know, kind of having fun integrating some pieces early on. But, you know, as it's gone on, it becomes a little bit more straightforward. Tom, it wants to be a perfectionist. He wants his team to be perfect. So, you can hear him, yelling certain things, things that you probably can't say on the podcast, or out loud. For a matter of fact, there was one that happened yesterday, where it was just very loud and everybody could hear. But, that's Tom. That's what we expect from Tom. Everything looks good. Everything looks clean. A couple other guys getting integrated. Julio Jones just coming in. So he's kind of slowly being integrated into the offense as he learns.
Awesome. Now, no team ever wants to see their backups getting regular season snaps, right? Unless maybe it's at the end of the game and you're up like 43-0 or something like that. But unfortunately, it might happen. It's a part of the game. So let's look at Blaine Gabbert, the number 2 quarterback, much to the chagrin of some fans who wanted Kyle Trask kind of be that number 2. How did Blaine look when he got in there, when you saw him get some snaps in with his team?
Blaine looks good. He's kind of been, kind of a traveler across the NFL as a backup quarterback and kind of found his home backing up Tom Brady here in Tampa Bay. And he looks good. Just typical, very consistent for a backup quarterback. Can't ask much more from him. Gives you good looks. Is able to kind of get the guys in the right spots, guys that are new to the team as well. Looks sharp, not necessarily Brady sharp, but, sharper than, Kyle Trask, our third string quarterback. So, just kind of what you expect from Blaine. It's not over the top, not anything that's below average either. So right around where he's been throughout his whole entire career.
Absolutely. So then, of course, Kyle Trask, the third string quarterback right now, he is a hot topic from time to time, and he will be again this preseason. So it's a small sample size right now, of course, for Kyle in his career, really only his second training camp. But did you like what you saw from the Florida Gators quarterback, if you can be unbiased about that, or did you come away relatively unimpressed?
Believe it or not, I was actually a fan of Kyle Trask when he was at UF, even going against my Knowles. So, I liked him coming out. He's kind of progressed throughout his whole entire career from high school to college to now being in the NFL. He's kind of had to take that long path and then finally gets the opportunity to start near the end of his career, no matter, what stop at what level he's been at. So, moving here to Tampa Bay, we're kind of seeing the same thing. The Bucs did take him in the second round of the draft a couple years back, and now he's going to be entering, I believe, his third season with the team. And he's still got to develop a lot. He's still got to catch up to the speed of the game. I can't believe if it was today or yesterday, but he threw back-to-back picks in the end zone, which, is not really what we're looking for from the
Yeah.
guy that is supposed to kind of be the person who takes the reins once Tom does leave. But it's a developmental process. He does make quick decisions with the ball, so that's a positive as well. He's just, kind of got to keep developing. He's got to be able to catch up to the pace of the game, which he has shown to do in the past. Like I said, at every level he's been at. So hopefully after this year, he'll be able to do that. But we're going to see a ton of him come these preseason games. So hopefully, he's able to kind of give the fans a little something to look forward to after that, because after that, it's kind of the Tom Brady show, and you're not going to be getting as many reps as Tom or Blaine are going to be getting. But Trask right now is getting more reps than say a Ryan Griffin would at this point in training camp. So he has great moments where he can throw the ball deep downfield, but then he has those lapses where you're like, well, is this really the guy that we want back there when Tom Brady retires?
Yeah, so some potential, but some growing still to do, right? People got to remember during the regular season, like you said, it's the Tom Brady show. He's not really getting a whole lot of reps, if any, at all, mostly mental reps and watching film. So, he's got to get what he can get. So you mentioned that we're going to see a lot of Kyle Trask this preseason, which I'm really looking forward to, because Locked On Bucs listeners and viewers, we had a lot of conversations this offseason about Kyle Trask, and so I'm looking forward to getting some more evidence, some more tape, some more hands-on, well, not hands-on, but eyes-on looks at the young quarterback. So how do you feel about head coach Todd Bowles basically confirming what I think we all expected, was that Tom Brady is going to get plenty of reps in practice, plenty of joint practice reps against live competition, but we're not going to see a whole lot of him in the preseason games where defenders can actually hit him and potentially injure him. How do you feel about that revelation, which means, of course, more Gabbert, more Trask especially, and then even some Griffin?
Mm-hmm. I like it. At this point in Tom's career, it makes the most sense. He's 45. He's not getting any younger. You want to take as much care of him as you possibly can. I mean, he played through that knee injury, through pretty much 2 seasons almost, and you don't want that to, be a reoccurring thing that's going to happen. So sitting Tom out for preseason games, it doesn't bother me. A lot of people were like, oh, well, Tom does this on a regular basis, like he's used to it, which is not really the case. He's almost thrown for 6,000 yards in his entire career in preseason games. And that's only, you're taking maybe for a quarterback like Tom Brady, maybe 5 to 10 passes during a preseason game before, the backups start coming in. So, being able to put up those numbers across his career in the preseason shows that he does, participate in those games. But, at this point in his career, it's probably smart to, kind of hold him back. What he provides you. You don't need to see anything from him at all. And why risk injury at this point when you probably need the best Tom Brady that you're going to have this upcoming season, because a lot of teams got better.
Quarterbacks are the king in the NFL, but defense wins championships. So let's take a look at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense. But before we do that, first, have you tried Built Bar Puffs? Because if you haven't, you're depriving yourself of one of life's greatest joys. And guess what? Cookie dough chunk puffs have a light and chewy texture, real cookie dough chunks, and of course, they're covered in 100% real chocolate. All the joys of eating cookie dough without the hassle of making it. Plus, it's actually healthy for you. And if you love peanut butter, there's a peanut butter lovers bundle available now that's going to blow you away. Like all Built Bars, the cookie dough chunk puff and the peanut butter lovers bundle is covered in 100% real chocolate. That means they're healthy and they're tasty. What's great about Built is that all of their bars are made with collagen protein, which your body absorbs more efficiently, and it provides tons of health benefits. So you can eat something that tastes good and is good for you. Go to Built.com, use the promo code LOCK15, and you'll get 15% off your order. Again, that promo code LOCK15 at Built.com. Thanks once again for making the Locked On Bucs podcast first listener review of the day. Let's get back to my conversation with CalebSkinner of BucsGameday.com. He's CalebSkinner at CHS Knoll on Twitter, writer and reporter for BucsGameday.com, part of the Sports Illustrated family of sites. Caleb, let's take a look at the defense now. Let's hit all 3 levels, and we'll start up front. Logan Hall and Akiem Hicks are expected to rotate a little bit. I think Hicks is the early favorite to be the starter, while Hall we probably expect to rotate in like Joe Tryon-Shoyinka did last year with JPP. So what are your thoughts first about the rookie, the second-round draft pick, Logan Hall?
He's consistent. That's one thing you can notice. He's consistent in what he does. He's still got to learn a little bit technique, which is, to be expected from a rookie entering into the NFL, catching up to the speed, learning the different techniques, which he'll be able to learn. He's got a lot of veterans to learn from. Unfortunately, he was the one that ended up going into the lower knee of Ryan Jensen. So he was, when we spoke with him, during our press conference time with the media, he felt really bad about that. He's like, it's just one of those things that happens. You can't really control it. You can do as much as you can to not let it happen, but It happens. He was very apologetic, kind of shaken up, but not really letting it bother him too much because, if you do let it bother you, it'll get in your head and you're not going to be playing at the level or speed that you want to play. But he looks good, consistent, really putting in the effort and the work out there to, learn the things that you need to do to be able to get on the field. So he's going to have some, work to do to kind of earn those repetitions in actual game play. Cause he also, not only is there Hicks, but you also have Nunez Roches there as well, who is probably going to get playing time because he's, kind of been a vet in that rotation these past 2 seasons as well for the Bucs. So he's got a little bit of work to do, but that defensive line will shuffle.
Absolutely. And they're going to shuffle because they're missing Ndamukong Suh, who was a big part of their success since he arrived in Tampa. So early on, do you think that this new look defensive line, I mean, 2 of the 3 starters are the same, but still kind of a new look defensive line can be improved from the previous versions? Do you think it'd be about the same, or do you think it might even regress a little bit?
I think it'll definitely improve. Suh's at the later end of his career, and he wasn't necessarily putting up the stats that you're used to earlier on when he was with the Lions per se. But he did provide a great run stuff next to Vita Vea on that defensive line, which is going to be missed a little bit, you think. But then you bring in another veteran in Akiem Hicks, who is not only good at stuffing the run, but even better at getting into the backfield now at this point of his career than Suh is, even though they're probably right around the same age. Then you add in Joe Tryon, who is taking that next step, probably going to become a starter on the edge there, opposite of Shaq. So you really like that. He's been getting some rave reviews across the board about his development into his second year. So there's a lot of promise there. And the only question I guess you could really have is that depth going to hold up? It should. Like I mentioned before, Nunez Roches is returning. Logan Hall can play inside and outside on the defensive line. So it's a different line, but ultimately everything really remains intact, and I think it should be an improvement even with the losses of JPP and Ndamukong Suh, like you mentioned before.
Yeah, you mentioned Joe Tryon-Shoyinka has moved to the linebacker position, but let's start inside. A lot of people want to see Devin White take a step forward from a mental standpoint, making the smarter play for his team, not necessarily the most exciting play that he can make. It can be hard at camp, because honestly, even with the pads on, guys still kind of take it easy on each other, on teammates. We'll see a lot more next week with the Dolphins in town. But was there a moment at all where you kind of looked at 45 and he did something that maybe stood out more as a veteran type play over the more energized, young kind of go-getter type of approach?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's necessarily a specific play or anything, but you can tell he's focusing on, turning his hips, moving his body in a way where he's able to, kind of move faster. He's a fast guy, but being able to accelerate and get into coverage a lot quicker than he has in the past, which I think has been kind of a knock on him, is being able to stick with, some of these wide receivers in the slot, or, a tight end that is a little bit quicker than he is. That's kind of been a knock on him. He does make those great plays, and he's a great linebacker. He's the top 10 linebacker in the league probably. So, but there are things that he can improve on, and that's one of those things that you can tell that he's working on. He's not taking it slow, but he's making sure that his technique is perfected, and that's kind of one of those veteran things that you're talking about there, David. Is not necessarily a play when it comes down to it, but the small little details, which is going to make your game expand even more, and propel you into an even better linebacker, if you will. And he was injured last season. Him and Levante went through the injuries last year, and we missed them in different portions of different games. So he's trying to really remain healthy, is what he's been talking about as well. But on top of that, he's just kind of trying to make sure his technique is good, make sure that his fluidity is good. All his feet movement and his hips has been something you can really tell that he's working on. And we'll be able to see even more of that once he gets in the pads and how he actually looks moving in that, instead of just, your typical, shells and shorts.
Yeah, I'm sure he's looking forward to getting some Dolphins on the field so he can actually put some hits on some people and not get in trouble for doing it. So then we move to the outside. Again, Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, did he look like a first-year starter to you? Second-year player, first-year starter, or did he look like a natural fit, kind of playing opposite Shaquille Barrett in that defense?
I absolutely think he is. He just looks much quicker than he does. He doesn't look like he's guessing. I think at points last year you could kind of be like, oh, he's guessing, or I guess some people called it, taking a play off from time to time, or not really understanding what's going on in front of him. But now it's read and react. Like, it's just, he goes straight in. He's more aggressive when it comes to the ball. When it's snapped, he's quick off the edge. He's using different techniques than he did last year that he was able to learn And he looks much better, much more improved. Not saying that he didn't look great last year, because I thought he looked great after not playing for, what was it, almost 2 seasons, because he opted out his senior year there in Washington. So, seeing him come from last year after not playing for all the time, he looked pretty decent. And then now being able to have that whole season under his belt going into now, he looks really good. Looks like he definitely is going to be able to hold down that opposite spot, opposite of Shaq.
We're going to bring it all the way back around to the offense to wrap up this conversation with Caleb. But first, this podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. My first career in life was a real stress builder, and because of it, we always had professionals available to talk about things if we needed to use them, and it was a good thing that we did. Life is full of twists and turns, and it's important to show up for yourself through it all. BetterHelp Online Therapy can help you do that wherever you are. They assess your needs and can match you with your own licensed professional therapist in less than 48 hours. Life is a team sport, and nobody does it alone. When you sign up and take their intake survey, you're going to see that it's simple, direct. There are no wrong answers. You can take all the time you want, and the best part is you do it privately instead of waiting in some room or some office of some building when you're doing it. And then when you're done, BetterHelp will find someone who can work with your needs. It's not a crisis line. It's not self-help. It's professional therapy done securely online, available to people worldwide. You can log into your account anytime and send a message to your therapist. You can schedule weekly video or phone sessions so you don't have to be on camera if you don't want to. And getting therapy every week is as easy as a few clicks on your laptop or your phone. And BetterHelp understands sometimes people just don't click, and it makes it easy and free to change therapists if you need to. It's more affordable than traditional offline therapy, and there's still financial aid available if you need it. And they have a special offer for our listeners right now. You get 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/lockedon. That's 10% off your first month of online therapy at betterhelp.com/lockedon. betterhelp.com/lockedon. Caleb Skinner, writer, reporter for BucsGameday.com, on Twitter at CHS Knoll, here on the Locked On Bucs podcast. Time for the secondary now, Caleb. Carlton Davis says he wants to be the most feared cornerback in the National Football League. Carlton Davis's father may or may not have dropped a comment on one of our recent episodes, not happy about some of the things that I'm pretty sure James said, because I'm not going to take that heat from Carlton Davis's dad. How close do you think CD3 is to hitting his goal of being the most feared guy in the entire league?
I mean, he has improved each and every year he's been in the league, in my opinion. And last year it really showed, especially with all the injuries and everything like that. He was our number one lockdown corner. He is going to remain our number one lockdown corner. When I first saw, Sean Murphy-Bunting come in and with him, and Sean was having, the best years, over Carlton. And then Carlton just comes on the scene and is like, I'm a ball hawk. I'm going to be around the ball at all times. I'm a sure tackler. I'm doing this. He's not getting mentioned, with the names of, let me see, Marshawn Lattimore or Jalen Ramsey or anybody like that. But I think he deserves so. And I think he's out to prove it this year that he is one of those. He breaks on the ball very quickly. He stays on the hips of his wide receivers, contests pretty much every ball that comes his way. So guy's a lockdown, and he's going to come out and prove it this year. That's for sure.
Carlton Davis's father, a fan of Caleb Skinner. I think we can go ahead and make that official. Well, that's the ironic thing. We actually weren't trying to insult Carlton Davis, but apparently the way we said our compliments didn't necessarily sit well. That's okay. It happens from time to time. Let's close this down looking back at the offense now. And let's hit the wide receiver position. Without Chris Godwin on the field, we know there's some names. We know there's some new additions, some exciting things. I mean, but it's kind of weird. You would think like a team missing, Chris Godwin, one of those versatile players, possibly in the NFL in his position, can do things at every level of the game or on the field, can go deep, can do the screen and turn that into something. We've even seen him take some end around carries. Did this look like a group that was missing arguably its most versatile player, or did it look like just a really talented group of wideouts even without Chris Godwin? And who stood out the most from the group to you?
It seems like it's been a seamless transition. It hasn't really mattered who's in there. We do know that probably Tampa Bay has the deepest, most talented wide receiver group in the NFL at this moment, especially with the signing of Julio Jones. But seeing guys come in when Chris Godwin is out, you know what you're getting from Mike. So you don't really need to talk about Mike because Mike's going to do Mike. And then you add a guy like Russell Gage, who is getting rave reviews himself. Apparently nobody can cover Russell. whenever he's open, he's open. And Tom's been able to get the ball there. Blaine's been able to get the ball there. He's had great over the middle catches, great end zone catches. He just looks like he's learning the system very quickly. The coaches have raved about him. And it's been a great, transition from Atlanta to here, and being able to work with a quarterback like Tom Brady is probably helping him a ton. Then, you look at, Julio Jones gets brought in. He'll probably be your wide receiver 4 once Chris does return. So you're looking at, maybe a little bit of challenge there between Julio and Russell Gage to see who's going to be wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4. But I probably see Julio in more 4 wide receiver sets. He hasn't been as involved in, the 7-on-7s or the 11-on-11s quite yet. He did start, I think, this week, starting to get a little bit more involved in those. But earlier last week, he was kind of just doing one-on-one work with, one of the staff members, catching over the shoulder passes, doing a lot of jug machines, things of that nature. But he's also talking to Tom Brady. So, he's going to be dialed in. He's a vet. He knows what to do. And then you throw in guys on the back end after those guys. Tyler Johnson has had one hell of a camp, according to everybody I've talked to. Looks really good. He does have a drop here and there, which you're accustomed to at this point if you're a Buccaneer and you've paid attention to Tyler Johnson. But he's improved that. It's not as common as it used to be with him. So he's looking good. He's gotten great reviews as well from the coaching staff. And then you have Jalen Darden, who's really come on. The coaches have praised him a ton for just keeping his head down and playing football, not worried about anything else. He made a pretty nasty grab on the sidelines when I was there this weekend and did a little dance move and was able to get upfield. So really good to see him kind of starting to come into his own after last year being kind of underwhelming is kind of not the word I'm looking for, but underwhelming in a way for him after coming out of North Texas and scoring 19 touchdowns his senior year. So he was able to do a little bit in the return game, which is probably what's going to keep him on the squad this year is going to be him being able to be in that punt return game. So that might separate him, from a Scotty Miller or a Brashard Perriman or a Cyril Grayson. So all these guys are going to kind of be on that line. I mean, you look at the depth chart for the Bucs in their wide receiver room, and it's absolutely stacked. I mean, you saw Cyril Grayson come on at the end of last season as well. What you're getting with Brashard Perriman. He's been in the league for quite some time. So all these guys are kind of fighting for a job, and Scotty Miller's been having a heck of a camp too. So all these guys are really playing their butts off to try and earn one of these wide receiver spots. So it'll be tough to see, who they end up cutting at the end of the preseason.
Yeah, that's crazy. You really do have about 10 receivers that could feasibly have NFL roster spots, and it's a little bit nuts. Let's move to the running back position. Not quite as crowded, right, but still kind of crowded behind Leonard Fournette. How do you view the group of backs that we have competing for touches in Tampa? Obviously, Giovanni Bernard, Keyshawn Vaughn, and my fellow Sun Devil, Rachaad White.
Yeah, that room is deep too. Obviously your running back room is not going to be quite as deep as your wide receiver room, but it's deep. Even with the departure of Ronald Jones, we went ahead and added Rachaad White, who has looked absolutely amazing early on at camp. Jason Licht has even been raving about him, how he said that he reminds him of how Chris Godwin came in his first season, which if you get, compared to Chris Godwin and how he entered the league and you saw what he was able to do, then you have a pretty bright future, in my opinion, in the NFL. So he's been really showing out, really learning the playbook as well, keeping his head and nose to the grind. So really liking what we're seeing from him. He looks like an typical NFL back. So he's quick, shifty, a little bit more so than, Rojo was in the past. So Rojo got downhill a lot more, but, Rachaad has a little bit more of those moves in that vision. Lenny is obviously going to be your bell cow horse running back. So not much to go there. You know what you're getting with Lenny. All the, weight issues aside at this point, he's kind of shed all that. So, he's been great. Typical Lenny, got, Brady a great cake for his birthday. So looking good for him. And then, you look at the other two, Giovanni Bernard, as Stephen Shea likes to call him. He's probably going to, stick down for that one of those roster spots just because he's a vet. Really great at catching the ball out of the backfield with the soft tosses from Brady. So the real question mark here is, are we going to keep 4 guys or are we going to keep 3? And the guy that I have the biggest question mark on is the guy out of Vanderbilt, and that's Keyshawn Vaughn. He's had some opportunities and he's taken advantage of one of them. I don't forget if it was against the Panthers last season where he took that one, really long run for a touchdown. But that's really been the only bright spot that we've seen from him. haven't really shown flashes as much as, the other guys have or have in the past in the case of Giovanni Bernard. So it'll be interesting to see what happens, but a great, deep and talented running back room. So Rachaad White, I think, will start to push, Lenny for some more touches as the season progresses, just because we saw Leonard Fournette wear down a little bit towards the end of last season, especially in the playoffs. So I want to kind of take the load off of him. And I think Rachaad White is probably first in line to receive some of those touches.
Absolutely. Yeah. You want to keep guys juiced for the, well, not illegally juiced, but legally juiced for the postseason run. Again, he's Caleb Skinner, writer and reporter for BucsGameday.com, on Twitter at CHS Null. First time on the show, certainly won't be the last. Caleb, we appreciate your time, brother. I appreciate you. And I look forward to seeing you down in Tampa in just a few days.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Looking forward to it and can't wait to see you, get to actually meet you in person, and looking forward to the next time I'm on here.
Once again, a big shout out to Caleb Skinner of BucsGameday.com, and a big shout out to you. We thank you for making the Locked On Bucs podcast first listener, first view of the day. Now make your second listen the Locked On NFL podcast. Our national NFL experts and insiders keep fans dialed in with the biggest stories and the latest news from around the league. James and I will be back to wrap up the week. If you've got reactions to today's show, any other show, additional questions or topics you want us to discuss, send them into lockedonbuckspodcast@gmail.com or call in and be a part of the show by dialing 813-444-5841. Make sure you come back for our end of week episode, guys. It's our last week before we will, or our last episode rather, before we will start coming to you from Tampa for Dolphins week. And we've got an announcement to make that at least some of you are going to be very excited about. For James Yarcho, until then, I'm David Harrison. Until we speak again, make sure you're checking out everything we're writing over at BucsNation.com and at BucsGameday.com. Find us on Twitter at DHarrison82, at JYarcho_Bucs, and at Locked On Bucs. If you're out and about, please be safe. Please be kind to one another. Wash your hands, fire the cannons, and thank you for joining us right here at Locked On Bucs.